At the second fundraising session today, and at the very beginning of the session, please welcome Stien Ploeg with her Friend-to-friendraising presentation.
Thank you for carefully correct pronunciation of my name. I appreciate it. Thank you all for coming to this session. Can everyone hear me all right? How about this?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we can just close the door.
sure. If you suffocate because of the heat, just let me know and I'll open it back up.
Open it after 10 minutes or something.
So again, thank you all for being here. My name is Stien Ploeg. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers, but I'm also totally cool with gender neutral ones. I work for Open Cages UK, which is a member of Anima International. And today I would like to share with you some of my ideas and experiences in expanding your donor base by empowering your volunteers and activists to do fundraising for you. So what is the knowledge I want you to walk away with by the end of this session? Of course, I would like you to learn what fundraisers are, some of the benefits and disadvantages of them, and I'll go over 3 examples of fundraisers, namely doing online fundraisers, a pub quiz with a twist, and lastly, community building dinners. And I could do a full session on each of those, for which we do not have the time, so you'll just get a taste today of those 3 examples, and hopefully I'll light a spark that sets you on the path of engaging your activists in fundraising. And I also want to acknowledge that these are my ideas from my experiences, and they might not always translate perfectly to your situation. Maybe you work in a very different sized organization, or maybe the attitude to fundraising is very different in the culture or the region where you are at. So in the end, I would also love your feedback on what you think works for you or not at all, so that I can also learn from you. And because I am nervous and because we have little time, please help me stay focused and save your questions for the end. So first of all, what is fundraising or friend-to-friendraisers? It's basically taking crowdfunding to the next level. So a friend-to-friendraiser is basically a peer-to-peer fundraising event. And crowdfunding is when you ask your network for support, for gifts, and peer-to-peer is then asking not just your network for support, but also asking them to reach out to their personal network so that you reach even more people. So what then are the benefits of doing that, asking for your friends for support? Does anybody have a guess what these images represent? Yeah. Exactly. So the Fox clock stands for saving you time. If your volunteers do some of the fundraising for you, that means that you have more time to maybe think about the fundraising strategy and the more in-depth work. Or maybe you have more time to do the actual pushing of your issues or campaigns. Money, of course, the more people you ask, the more money you will likely get. The logo is over there in the center because you reach out to so many extra new people. It's a great opportunity to also push your brand and to tell people who you are, what you do, and why that's important. And then all the hands stand for the many extra supporters you get. And it could be just one-off donations, but it's also possible that maybe those extra people will also end up signing your petitions or maybe even becoming volunteers. And some might maybe don't eat as much meat anymore or occasionally eat a plant-based meal, and that's a win too. And then lastly, the high-fiving couple represents the closer bond you might get with your volunteers, because fundraising can be very motivating because it's so measurable. Advocacy can be kind of hard to estimate sometimes what exactly you've done, but when I raise funds for open cages, I have very tangible proof that I made a contribution, and that can be motivating. So when would you ever not do peer-to-peer fundraising? Well, you will always have to do some type of cost-benefit analysis. If on the heavy end of the scale, if you end up spending or investing more time, more volunteer resources, and more money than you get in returns from both revenue and exposure, then it's obviously not worth it. So we'll move to we'll move to online fundraising first. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have seen or been involved in something like this. There are many different platforms that you or your activists can use to raise money online. There is, I think up here are Classy and GoFundMe, but there's also Fundly. You can do it through Facebook. Even Instagram is gonna add donate buttons soon. Can you raise your hand if you have ever donated to something like this that maybe a friend or a family member was in? Okay, yeah, more than half. And has anyone ever hosted one? Have you ever put one of these up online yourself? Okay, yeah, so that's also already quite a few. There are 3 big ingredients that I think everyone should have with an online fundraiser. First of all, have a strong story, and that should be both in the visuals, so have pictures of the turtles that you're trying to help, or of who you are, showing how engaged you are, and also make it very personal. Because you send this to your friends and their friends, people are more likely to build a relationship and are more likely to give through their emotional bond with you than sometimes to a cause. And then lastly, be specific in your story. You see here that the medical treatment of these turtles in, I forget where this is, India, costs $50. So that specific number really helps people visualize what they will achieve. And then the next ingredient, other than a strong story, is have an achievable goal. If you want your fundraisers and your volunteers to feel successful so that they will do it again. So don't set crazy high goals that you'll never reach, because that won't motivate you and then you'll just feel depressed afterwards. And if you reach your goal very early, you can always increase it. That's the ideal thing about these types of online fundraising. It's very easy to increase the number. And then lastly, follow up. Both you and your activists should reach out to everybody who donated to thank them, because they might not know you even after they have given. So introduce them to your work and thank them for what they have done for you and for animals, and then maybe they'll become a consistent supporter of your work. And let's see if this is moving. Okay, so when would you do these types of online fundraisers? I have 2 occasions that I think work really well. One is popular national holidays. If you were here in the session just before me, you saw Stien and her example of Friends Day, which is kind of like Valentine's Day in Finland. So you could, for instance, ask all your volunteers to do an online fundraiser leading up to Mother's Day around dairy cows. And then on the day of Mother's Day, you can announce and celebrate the amount that you altogether raise. Earth Day or Valentine's Day are other possibilities. And then there's also personal life events, for instance, a wedding. I don't know how it is for weddings in whatever region you live in, but in the US, for instance, people have these large wedding registries where everybody gives you fancy crate and barrel mugs or cutlery. What you could ask your activists to do instead is ask them to ask their family and friends for a gift to your charity instead of more stuff that they don't really need. You could do the same with your with children's birthdays or your own birthdays. The one thing when you do a fundraiser around a personal life event is that you should keep it somewhat a positive message because no one wants to associate their wedding with something really tragic. And then some specific examples on social media giving and Facebook. What to keep in mind here is behavior. Most people behave based on how they see others act and what they think is expected of them. And Facebook really helps you leverage this with their stalker-like notifications of what everyone around you is doing. And something that I'm thinking of here is when you start a donation campaign, make sure that you first ask a couple of your closest friends to already make a gift so that it doesn't reach everyone else with nothing in the campaign yet. Because if I see that no one else gives to something, to a fundraiser, then I might not be very pressured to do so either because no one else is doing it, so I don't think anyone is gonna look weird at me if I don't. And also maybe I think that all my friends know something that I don't, so I don't really think that I maybe should donate. Or maybe I just think that my tiny gift won't make a difference. On the other hand, if all my friends donate, then I feel like I should too, because I don't want to be that one unsupportive friend who you can't count on for support. So even if a goal has already been reached, I might still give. So keep that in mind and make sure that there's already a few gifts in there, maybe your mother, your spouse, someone who works for the same organization. And then second, when it comes to peer pressure, I don't know if you have too, but sometimes I give to a cause that I don't even really care that much about, just because my sister-in-law or my best friend is hosting the fundraiser. So make sure that you also always invite everyone who loves you to a fundraiser, because even if they don't give a damn about animals, they care about you, so they will just see it as a gift to you. And then lastly, when it comes to behavior, most people give for altruistic reasons, but a very nice side benefit is that you are viewed as good people if you donate. And people might like that because of vanity or because they feel like they need the external validation for a sense of self-worth, or maybe they just want to really set a good example for their friends. So when someone gives, thank them in your Facebook campaign and tag them in it so that they see and so that their friends see that they have made a difference for chickens or whatever animal you choose to raise money for. And then the last thing that is really important in social media campaigns that you'll have with Facebook and probably hopefully soon with Instagram too, is that you need to keep it alive. Make sure that you don't just post it, invite people, and then forget about it, because other people will forget about it. So keep adding photos, like you see up there. My friend Michael Aguilar had a very successful fundraiser, and part of that was because he kept adding photos and showing how close they were to the goal, what money was already raised, and how little still was needed. So yeah, keep it alive. And then why would you do this, or why would you not do it? Well, the first reason is that it is cheap. It costs, especially when you use Facebook, there's almost no fees, and it's very easy to reach people, and it costs you as a fundraiser or as an organization almost no time. And then maybe why wouldn't you ever do an activist online fundraiser? The only real reason for me is when you are running an issue campaign, when you're working really hard and trying to work on moving or influencing the public or companies on, let's say, broilers. If an individual is then doing an online campaign for you around cows, you don't want that to distract from your main issue. And second, this is not really a reason not to do it, but just advice to do really research on the platform that you use. Some will take a big cut of your donation, so it costs you a lot of money. Others might take a lot of information or privacy details from your donors, so do some research in what you want and can use, especially if you're not a registered nonprofit. Now, for something completely different, I present to you a pub quiz with a twist. So, Trivia for Cheetahs is an event that I have hosted in the past. It starts basically as a regular type of pub quiz. Oh wait, I have a prize. Does anyone know what the answer is to this question? Which animal has the best color vision? Is it chickens, humans, pigs? Sorry? No.
Pigs.
No. Chickens. Okay. Since you had it wrong, you have to share those. Okay, so to participate in this quiz, teams need to come up with a minimum amount to participate. And they can raise that on an online platform from their friends and family. And then comes the big twist. For this pub quiz, you come up with some officially licensed cheats that teams can use to win. And they can get these cheats if they raise a lot of money. So a cheat could be, if you raise more than €1,000, you could get the cheat of 0 fucks given. That lets you erase the points of another team who don't do it. So the more money the team raises, the bigger their chances are to win the pub quiz. And the pub quiz does have prizes, but you'll have an award for both the winner of the pub quiz, but also for the team that raises the most money. Because you really want to encourage as much fundraising as possible, and you want people to also keep their eye on the cause, which is, of course, the raising money. So yeah, this concept sounds maybe a little bit complicated, but I can share more details if you are interested in hosting something like this. So yeah, where do you get the revenue from with the pub quiz? There is, of course, like I mentioned, the donations raised by a team, and they can really get pretty high because of the competition element, because people raise money in advance and they see how much money a specific team has raised, and if they raise more, then they get a prize regardless, and also they have much bigger chance on winning the quiz. And then secondly, corporate sponsorship. I don't know if you saw in the previous slide, I made it open pages and if possible, me present. Well, because you reach a very large audience with an event like this, because there's not just the people in the pub quiz, there's also the outreach to all the different donors that are potential donors that are asked for money meeting up. There might be companies in your area that are willing to give you money in exchange for some exposure. And then lastly, if you host this in a pub, let's say on a Tuesday, then you might also get a percentage of the drink sales. because you bring a lot of people to a bar that or a restaurant that might not otherwise have shown up. Now, behind the scenes, as you can imagine, this is a very complicated, very involved thing to coordinate. I don't know if anyone has ever planned a regular pub quiz. That's already a lot of planning because there's like team recruitment, there's finding a venue, finding a very engaging MC, and you need, of course, fact-checked questions and a ton of other things. But on top of that, there is also the specific fundraising element that you need to keep track of. You have to figure out exactly what the cheats are that you want to use and how many and what they're worth. You need to track all your donations. And the biggest thing that takes a lot of time and that you need to work on is making sure that every team and every member of that team keeps fundraising all the way through the end. Because again, that's what it's about, and you want to make sure that they stay engaged and in competitive mode from beginning all the way to the day of. And that also gives you an idea of why you would ever not do a trivia event for cheaters, because it is a lot of work. And if you don't have really good volunteers and if you don't have a lot of lead time to plan this, then don't bother. Just worry about it some other time. And another thing is that sometimes the messaging can get a little bit convoluted because the system is kind of complicated and people might get more involved in the people might get more involved in like the competition element and in the trivia and kind of forget about your cause, and you don't want that to disappear. But it is a lot of fun for the people who are participating, so that's definitely a benefit. People will associate your organization and your brand as a group of people who do cool things for cool causes. And of course, there's also a ton of money involved, possibly, because of the different revenue sources. So I would also definitely see that as a big bonus. And lastly, because it is in person, you have an opportunity to talk to people about what you do and really engage them more in your cause and what you are all doing this for, so that they all feel good about the fun that they've been having. And then the last example that I would like to share with you are community building dinners. So these are some completely different types of events again, and also events that can be hosted by your supporters. And they're intimate, small dinners around a purpose. And the goal is as much conversation and learning from your community as it is about raising money. So there are multiple ways of hosting a community dinner. My favorite way is something like this. You have a team of 2 people, one who takes care of the stomachs and the other one who takes care of the conversation. And together you invite a group of people. How many? Well, more than a few, but not so many that they can't all fit around a large dining room table where everybody can see each other and hear each other. Because ideally you have a table-wide conversation and you can listen to each and every one of you, and you talk one at a time, preferably. And then who do you invite? Well, that totally depends on your subject of your choosing. You want to invite maybe people from different backgrounds that are not all already into animal rights or animal welfare, but pick people who do something good or vaguely related to what you do. It could be maybe something, people who are in environmental protection, or who fight world hunger, or maybe a journalist who writes about restaurants or agriculture in your local newspaper. And then get all these people together around a topic. And that topic could, for instance, be the representation of vegans in popular culture and the media. And what does that mean for the movement? or maybe tell your guests that you are interested to learn from them about the impact of animal agriculture on humanitarian issues. So you send all these people an invitation, and the invitation should have more or less 3 things, besides the logistics of date and time, etc. You want them to know that they should not bring anything. You will provide all the food and all the drinks. And second, you want them to know that this is about having a conversation. So it's not just having fun over dinner. You want to let them know that you are hoping to learn from them. And then the last thing, because your guests don't know each other, ask them for a fun kind of like fact about themselves that you can at the dinner use to introduce yourself to the other guests. Something that you could use is like, who was the first animal you ever loved? Or who taught you how to cook? And then the evening itself, when you will have the dinner, so you start, maybe with drinks and then those introduction questions. So you kind of get to know each other and feel some empathy. And then the deeper into the dinner you go, I recommend really doing at least like 3 courses so people feel really wined and dined and taken care of. And also so that you have the time to go deep into a subject. And this is where having a good host comes into play. You want someone who can really manage a conversation and can guide people in a gentle way to make sure that everyone gets to listen and gets to learn and is involved in the conversation, and that it becomes a conversation and not some type of contentious debate. And at the end, and you can use some writing questions with this, like, so what's the most harmful stereotype you see in comedy TV and why is that harmful? Or what are some things that you do practically in your own life to limit animal suffering? So you can also focus on some positive opportunities that you see for the future. Then at the end, over dessert or drinks, this is when your hosts together maybe will make some kind of inspirational ask. And that could be something like, what would you say? Well, okay, so thank you all for coming. I really appreciate everything that I've learned from you over this dinner. And I hope that you are as full in your bellies and your stomachs and your heads as I am. The conversations we had really inspired me. And before I kick you all out so I can do some cleaning, I want to ask one more thing of you. I am going to donate to Open Cages because I think that's a really concrete way for us to create the worlds that we have all just been talking about. And I hope that maybe you want to give something too, or at least that you let me introduce you to them so that you can learn more about them. Well, then hopefully some of them will, or all of them will at least say, yeah, sure, introduce me to them. And then you send them home and you start your cleaning. And then within a week, you thank everyone who has come for the ideas that they shared. You can maybe introduce them to the other people who were at the table if they didn't already do that. And you also introduce them to the organization. So if I, as a volunteer, hosted this dinner for Anima International, and you came to my dinner, then I will send an email to the both of you to introduce you so that the organization has an in and can really involve you more in the work. And of course, I would also email you to thank you. So when would you not do this? If you cannot provide a lavish meal and lots of beverages, then people don't feel the level of gratitude that is needed for them to really want to make at least some kind of donation at the event. And also, you want to provide lots of delicious food, because this is also a way to introduce vegan food as being delicious to your guests. And secondly, if you find it difficult to skillfully guide a conversation, maybe this is also not the best case, and then you can just host a potluck or something and talk about your work. And once again, the goal here is not just all about the money. You want to build relationships with people, particularly people who are either wealthy or influential or just very knowledgeable, so that you can create lasting, fruitful partnerships that you can either get collaboration or continuous giving from later on as well. And it's also a way to introduce people to delicious vegan food and for you to become a center in the community, because you don't just introduce people to you and your organization, but also them to each other, and that strengthens the movement as a whole. So then finally, some Friendraiser Pro tips. I've given you the 3 examples, and there are a couple of things that I think are important for each of them. The first one is make it as easy as possible for your activists. Provide them with plenty of great photos of your work, give them some language, and give them tips and be there for them if they have questions. Second, make it as easy as possible for your donors, especially when there's online giving involved or an online giving platform. Every single click that someone has to go through to make a donation will make it less likely that they give to you. So, and that goes even more for friends of friends who don't even know you or know what you are about. And then third, have some incentives, and you need incentives for both your activists and for your donors. Your activists can offer their donors, let's say, a home-baked pie or a drawing. I've even seen people offer a tattoo of someone's face on their body if they donated more than $10,000. It didn't happen. And you as an organization also want to offer your activists some recognition. So tell them, hey, thank you publicly, let's say on your Slack channel, or individually give them maybe a gift certificate to a local restaurant. And then fourth, what I have mentioned in each of those 3 different examples, always follow up. Because you will likely get a lot of new people who don't know you and who you don't know, and you want to make sure that they become a part of your community and that they will become continuous supporters. And for that, they need to know who you are, so you need to thank them specifically for what they have achieved by giving to you, and you also want to give them an opportunity to stay connected with you and get more information. And then lastly, it's important to test what you do. Don't just do a cost-benefit analysis at the start, but also do one at the end. You want to figure out what your fundraising ratio is. And with that, I mean is like, how much time and effort did this particular strategy cost, and how much did I get from it in return? So that you can then compare it to your more traditional ways of fundraising, and you figure out if that is what is the best way. So with that, we're at the end. If you have any questions, in return, I would also like to hear from you what you think is an example that you would like to try and why. And since I don't know how much time we have left. Oh, okay. But if we don't get through all the questions, and if you want the slides, please write your email address down. The slides don't just have the funny pictures, but also some of the notes that you can then use. And thank you for your attention and for all the work that you do for us.
Do you have these rules, papers, or anything?
Yeah, Yeah, I can share a few. I do have to say that I've never actually done this for an animal organization. I've done this for an education organization, writing organization. And so the rules were a little bit differently, but yeah, they can, for instance, be add a player for a whole nother round, or use your smartphone for a round. You can just come up with whatever you think works well, and then name it something funny or funny. And you also have to consider the amounts. So how much a cheat is worth depends on your region. Maybe 500 euros for smartphone use makes a lot of sense in the Netherlands, but maybe not in, I don't know, Poland. But yeah, I can give you a few examples that I have, and I can also share the full basic spreadsheet of how you track donations and all that.
Any other questions?
So is there anyone here who thinks, who hasn't used them in the past yet, but is going to ask their volunteers to do one of those basic online fundraisers through Facebook? Kirsten, what do you think how will you introduce this to your volunteers?
I think we would just have a personal meeting. I mean, I didn't think in depth about it, but I feel we could just have a personal meeting with all of them interested and tell them about the premise and why we want to do it now and why the topic is so important. Yeah. Did that answer?
What is part of the outcome, the income your organization will come from this kind of fundraising technique?
That's a very good question, and I don't have an answer. Because right now, we, since I now volunteer for Open Cages UK, and the organization is very young, and I mostly advise from Poland, where I live, so I don't work directly in the UK. So that's something that these parts of things really still have to get started for Open Cages UK. In the past, the other organization I've worked for in the US, it wasn't that big, but it was a big source of getting new people involved also. The fundraise, the trivia quiz in the US, we raised about, I think, $25,000 with it. And that was, I think we had about 20 different teams. Let's see, I haven't done that many of the Facebook fundraisers, because for that you need to be an officially registered charity. And also Facebook takes a lot of your private details. I'm not always a fan of that, but people love using it, so I consider using it. And then the community dinners have been, I've had it once where someone was there and wrote, like, at the spot, the $5,000 check. But I've also done them where no one at the end of the lavish meal gave me any money, but then later on they did. We built a relationship, or we worked on them.
Where was it?
Those were all in the US.
What about the GoFundMe and those pages? We were trying to have and they said that they are charging more, like there is some website like this, so they are taking this.
Like fees
Yes.
or, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you suggest kind of this?
Yeah, you really have to do some research, and it changes all the time. And for instance, I used to use CrowdRise, and that was bought by GoFundMe. So, and then their fee structure changes, but usually there is a fee per donation, so a hard number, and then there is a percentage, and sometimes there are also like administrative costs, and that can really run up. So you have to look into that. Facebook doesn't take, I think, any fees, and they pay also for the credit card costs, so that's a big advantage. but Facebook requires you to be an officially registered charity. And what else? Oh yeah, Facebook still makes money off of you, but that's just because they get so much money and they don't pay it out to you until you've raised $100. So they will have your money in their bank account and get interest over it for a short period of time, and that's how they make their money. Plus, they just want to expand in every part of your life. So yeah, do some research, and there are also alternatives that are nonprofits themselves that offer such platforms where they just want to make nonprofits, other charities more effective, and then offer an equivalent of GoFundMe.
Any other questions? No? So I think we can finish with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.